play the perpetual victim if sympathy will draw more focus, or explode into rage or melodrama when eclipsed, always certain that the world's gaze is not just desirable, but necessary for their psychological survival, a survival that takes precedence over truth, fairness, intimacy, and sometimes even the well-being of those closest to them. Tragically, and here lies the painful cognitive dissonance for those ensnared by the narcissist, their magnetism and theatrical flair can initially be deeply seductive, especially in cultures that equate charisma, confidence, or self-promotion with strength or worth, because a narcissist's hunger often masquerades as vision, leadership, or charm. But over time, the mask slips, and loved ones, friends, co-workers, and even casual bystanders are forced into supporting roles in the narcissist's relentless pursuit for applause, draining their own emotional reserves and eroding their sense of worth, as every gathering, celebration, or crisis is hijacked and recast as a stage for the narcissist's narrative. The devastation is twofold. Not only are others continually co-opted, dismissed, or destroyed for daring to refocus the spotlight or set their own needs above the narcissist's, but the narcissist themselves is condemned to a cycle of escalating desperation. When the applause ebbs, when the room grows cold, when admiration is diverted to a rival, or the crowd is bored, the narcissist's fragile false self totters on the brink, triggering a torrent of anxiety, irritability, and sometimes even catastrophic collapse, known in clinical circles as narcissistic injury, which can fuel panic, depression, vindictiveness, or acts of reckless self-sabotage meant to shock the world and themselves back to the rightness of their centrality. Excruciatingly, those close to the narcissist often internalize this script. Partners learn to sacrifice their desires, talents, or happiness to keep the peace. Children are raised to orbit an emotionally hungry parent, never seen for themselves, always shamed or dismissed if their brilliance threatens to eclipse the master performer. And teams or families fracture under the relentless pressure of pretending one person matters above all, leaving in their wake a trail of broken relationships, lost potential, and emotional exhaustion. The narcissist, all the while, oscillates between giddy triumph and bitter emptiness, bewildered by the fact that every fresh triumph, every room conquered, every cheer wrung from reluctant lips, only leaves them lonelier, more anxious, more certain that without constant worship they will slip into oblivion, erasure, or the existential terror of being ordinary. The manipulation can be dazzling, and tragically, so can the self-deception. When outshone, ignored, or simply faced with a world that refuses to bow, narcissists will create drama, starting arguments from thin air, weaponizing secrets, or inventing crises just to reclaim center stage, even if it means casting themselves as martyr or villain, so long as the spotlight returns. Worse yet, this endless cycle is turbocharged by social environments that reward spectacle over substance, workplaces that favor grandstanding executives, families that excuse explosive behavior for the sake of peace, friend groups that confuse manipulation with leadership, or media landscapes that turn narcissism into mass entertainment, reinforcing the myth that value equals visibility, not integrity or connection. The collateral damage is immense. In their desperate bid for attention, narcissists can never allow for true intimacy, authentic empathy, or genuine two-way connection, since to admit anyone else's reality as equally important is to threaten the entire ego edifice they've so laboriously constructed. And so, they remain forever isolated, hungry, surrounded by an audience, but incapable of experiencing actual love, respect, or belonging, haunted always by the suspicion that the adoration isn't real, that any moment of being ignored or challenged will expose a hollow core that feels unworthy and unlovable. For those trapped in their orbit, the experience is often traumatizing, forcing endless accommodation, rationalization, and loss of self, leading to lasting confusion, anxiety, and doubts about one's own worth or sanity. But, and here's the brutally clear, sobering educational truth: conscious mind. Jung's work serves as a reminder of the complexities and challenges inherent in understanding human nature. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious posits that beneath our personal experiences lies a shared layer of the unconscious mind, containing universal archetypes and symbols inherited from our ancestors. These archetypes, such as the hero, the shadow, and the anima, animus, are said to manifest in dreams, myths, and cultural narratives. Critics argue that this theory is unscientific and unverifiable, labeling it as pseudoscientific. They contend that the collective unconscious lacks empirical support and is based on subjective interpretations rather than objective evidence. Unlike Freud, who viewed religion as an illusion, Jung believed that spirituality and myth were essential to psychological health and individuation. He integrated concepts like synchronicity, the idea of meaningful coincidences, and parapsychology into his analytical psychology. This blending of psychology with spirituality and mysticism has been met with skepticism and criticism from the scientific community, which often regards these ideas as pseudoscientific and lacking empirical validation. Jung's approach to dream analysis differed from Freud's emphasis on sexual symbolism. He viewed dreams as personal and symbolic, reflecting the individual's unconscious mind and its archetypal contents. While this perspective has influenced many, it has also faced criticism for being overly subjective and lacking a standardized framework for interpretation. Some argue that Jung's methods are too interpretive and not grounded in empirical research. Jung's personal exploration of his unconscious mind is documented in the Red Book, a manuscript filled with vivid illustrations and narratives of his inner experiences. Some view this work as a profound insight into the depths of the human psyche, while others question its validity and relevance. The book's release decades after Jung's death has sparked debates about its authenticity and its place in the understanding of his theories. Jung's writings have been criticized for containing racist descriptions and assumptions, particularly about non-European peoples. He often described primitive cultures as psychologically underdeveloped compared to Europeans. These views have been widely condemned and have led to calls for a re-evaluation of his work. An open letter from Jungian analysts has acknowledged and apologized for the racism in his work, noting its impact on the field and those seeking training or therapy. Jung's concept of synchronicity suggests that events are meaningful coincidences if they occur with no causal relationship, yet seem to be meaningfully related. This idea has been met with skepticism from the scientific community, which often regards it as pseudoscientific due to its lack of empirical support and testability. Critics argue that synchronicity relies on subjective interpretations and confirmation bias, making it difficult to validate scientifically. Carl Jung's theories have left an indelible mark on psychology, influencing areas such as personality assessment, dream analysis, and the understanding of the unconscious mind. However, his work is not without controversy. Critics argue that many of his ideas lack empirical support and are based on subjective interpretations,